Greetings one and all, and welcome to, at last, another new faction focus for blah 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 blah, the Death Guard.
Yes!
So today it is being presented to you by myself, the chef, and this man here, the beard.
It's me!
It's you, the beard, and me, the chef.
Yes.
So today we're going to go through some good, some bad, and some ugly on the Death Guard. So we're going to break this down into little segments. We're going to do a couple of things about the army as a whole, and then sort of some sort of real standout units for us, and then like an overall sort of, you know, final verdict as well. So we're not going to do like a massive deep dive into this review. That will be coming at a later date. This is just kind of like a quick overview of some real standouts for us.
Yes.
So why don't we start with the good? It's always nice to start with the nice stuff. And for me, one of the big ones is the addition of the contagions.
Ooh.
So everyone's seen these. You've seen them on the Warhammer community site, but suffice it to say, the longer the game goes on, the bigger an aura that you get if your entire army is Death Guard. And this is what I really like, is that everyone seems to be getting combat doctrines now.
Yeah.
Like in terms of if your army is X, Y, Z, rather than if you run soup. And if you want to take allies and things like that, that's great, but you lose your contagions. And in all honesty, -1 toughness is a really bitter pill to swallow to give up.
Especially in the game.
Yeah, the minute you hit turn 4, it's a 9-inch bubble. So this isn't just a combat thing. And there's ways to boost that as well, be it through stratagems or psychic powers or unit abilities. There are ways to get that up to like 12, if not bigger, which is suddenly real scary. Now your bolters are wounding other marines on 3s. It's wounding toughness 3 stuff on 2s. It's a really potent ability that I think is totally worth having. And the other contagions that you can get access to via your warlord traits in the various play companies, I think are really, really good.
It's also a really nice fluffy addition to another army. So we're starting to see the way the armies are designed to be played the way you'd expect them to, in their aesthetic and in their backstories and things like that. So as the Death Guard go on through the battle, they become more bloated, and your opponent is less able to deal with
the miasma
stinkiness.
Follows them into the battlefield, and it's just the spreading of the disease. Like it's a really cool thematic ability that's also incredibly good in game. It makes them, like, if you get in that sort of that close range sort of firefights and combat with them in the mid game and the end game, it's going to be really tough, because not only are they tough to shift now, they're going to shift you a lot easier as well.
Yep.
And yeah, like I say, the play companies,
yes,
they get a real, because each one has some nice contagion specific ones. So they count their warlord traits. Again, this is something that they've previewed, but they didn't preview all of them. There's some real nice ones in the play companies.
Yeah, so the play companies is sort of one of my goods for this book. We saw the first example of this back in Psychic Awakening, like with Thousand Suns and all of their different cults. We've seen this now in this codex. It's a really nice addition. I'm really pleased that it's been continued to be rolled out for different factions. So the things I like about it is that it gives you another level of to your army being quite thematic, but it also means that you're not having to go by one really sort of must-take way of winning games with Death Guard or other factions. Now you can kind of cater your play style to these play companies. So if you're really into psychos, you've got something for that. If you're really into combat and things like that, there's play companies here for you. Your warlord traits get you get a play company specific warlord trait and a relic and etc. So it's just a really nice addition to an already very bulked out codex.
Yeah, it's just a nice little green horrible rotten cherry on top of the out of date cake.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's lovely if you're Death Guard.
Delish.
If you're Death Guard. And I think that is kind of what you said there about in regards to sort of auto take or like the only way to win. And that's a general thing with this book, which is very similar to the other ones that have been released so far, is that the general cleanup and the tidying of the rules is really good for a start. So I'll address it. There's a couple of things that I'll address. Everyone got really, really hyped about the data sheets that sort of were leaked, and everyone saw 2 attacks on their Plague Marines. Oh, it's going to be great. You don't get Hateful Assault though. but it's baked in is the point. You don't have to worry about, are we in the 4th turn of combat? I don't care, I'll still have my extra attack, which is really nice. It's little things like that which have just sort of cleaned things up, and there's a lot less auto takes, I would say. There's still some choices which are better than others. You're always going to get that, but now it definitely feels like there's more of a, I'm going to take that. I know I'm not handicapping myself because I'm not. So things like warlord traits. Now they're probably they're a tricky one because I think there are some which are better, but now there's some, and especially because the Plague Company ones are warlord traits. They're really good. Same with relics. You actually have some good relic choices now without needing to be like, oh, okay, well, this one's rubbish, and then I'll just look at the one that I'm absolutely 100% going to take from War of the Spider. Now there's ones where you look at it and you go, I could build around this, or I could take this because it's good. So overall, I think it's just generally been, everything feels like it's been tightened, but also pretty well balanced in terms of their points, for sure.
I agree. So there's plenty of good stuff, but something that kind of will work for all Death Guard players are the additions of the chapter approved rules. So being able to have secondaries that link into your army and their playstyle is so good, because the amount of times I have been like, which secondaries do I take? None of these make sense.
None of them are working for me.
Yeah, you're kind of taking them, you're sort of going by, you're having to pick the best of a bad bunch, essentially. But with the chapter approved secondaries in this book, they will work for any Death Guard player. Like we've seen with the Codex Space Marines and the Necrons, they're super thematic, and they are designed brilliantly because they work with the way the army works, rather than being a blanket thing for all armies. So this is the beginning, a continued march forwards with secondaries that work really well for your army, rather than having to just find ones that may or may not work for you. They're brilliant. They're really good.
Yeah, I think the best of the bad bunch thing is the best sort of descriptor there, because the amount of times you're just looking at an army going like, okay, but what do I take against that army?
Yeah.
There's a brilliant one in there, and some of them are, like you say, are super thematic, but also really good. I think there's one, I think it's called Spread the Sickness, and you do an action.
It's my favourite song.
And at the end of your turn, or when the action is completed, whenever that may be, you can choose to do one of two things. You can roll a d6, and on a 4+, you contaminate an objective, and you gain, like, I think it's 4 victory points. Or you could just take D3 mortal wounds as you spill your own guts onto it. And it's like, okay, sure, it's D3 mortal wounds, but when you've got things like poxwalkers that can do that, or 3 wound terminators that can do that, you kind of go, also, it's a guaranteed victory point for doing an action.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
You know, like there's little things like that. There's a few which are, they fit really nicely with the overall theme. I think there's another one there where it's, is it the Vectors one?
Fleeing Vectors, yeah. So if you're a Death Guard player, do you enjoy making your opponents fail morale, and do you enjoy using plague weapons? Well, we've got a secondary for you. It's called Fleeing Vectors. You score 3 victory points at the end of a battle round if any enemy units failed morale tests in this battle round, so that have 1 or more models destroyed by attacks made with plague weapons.
Yeah. Now, that's not always going to come up.
No.
But we know that morale is a bit more, you know, you only need 1 model to flee.
Yep.
It's not like it was like, oh, you get 1 victory point for every 5 models that flee, or something stupid like that. It's like 1 model runs away, that's 3 victory points, which sure, you need to do it with a plague weapon, but you got so many plague weapons and ways to make non-plague weapons plague weapons. So, you know, don't worry about it. And there will be games where you just go, this isn't going to happen. You know, like 5-man marine units or custodies, it's not going to happen. But you come up against orcs, yeah, I'll take that, because you're probably going to fail. If you've got like 1 orc unit that's by themselves, they're probably going to fail. Or you come up against like a unit of, or you come up against some Eldar with like 10, you know, like Guardians running around. So it's something thematic that also has a place. It's not an auto take, which I love.
Yes.
I just, anything that's an auto take, I just think is not good. And that's what I really like about this codex, is there's not really, which is nice.
That's good. And there are a lot of good, we can't talk about everything that's good in here because that's the majority of the book, but these are the things that sort of stood out to us. In terms of the bad stuff, luckily there's not a lot, but there's a couple of things we'd like to discuss. And we delve into the bad, and we can do the ugly at the same time, because luckily there's a lot less good, bad and ugly than there are good things.
Yeah, we roll into 2, it's nice.
For me, And this is something that is not necessarily just for Death Guard, but one thing that I do not like, which I think is bad in this book, are the Warlord traits. Now, not the Contagion ones, because the Contagion ones are good and they will blend into your chosen army quite well. But something I keep seeing in most books, and something that I've continued to see in 9th edition, is that there are always 1 or 2 fantastic Warlord traits, and 4 you're likely never going to take. That kind of leads into as well, I feel like Warlords are becoming a little superfluous, and I don't think they have the gravitas that they had previously.
Yeah, I kind of get where you're going, mainly because things like Slay the Warlord aren't a thing anymore. But to me, I like the fact that they aren't the be-all and end-all of an army anymore, and especially with stuff like Slay the Warlord, because that could... You didn't want to throw your Warlord away because he would be worth a victory point. So therefore, you're missing out on some really cool, epic moments where you'd be like, I've got my Warlord, and he's going to go fight your Warlord, and it's going to be really, really cool. Now you can kind of do that. Again, you know, depending on the army that you're going to play against or whatever. But it's weird because I know I said this earlier about I think there's some Warlord traits that are, you know, it feels better than it was. Because previously, let's be honest, when were you taking anything other than Arch Contaminator? You won't.
You might still be doing that now.
You might. Now, Arch Contaminator has changed quite a bit because now you've got to be within 12 inches for it to apply to your shooting weapons, and it's core only, so you're not getting it on your demon engines. None of your demon engines are core, guys. You're not getting it on your characters. So it's really your infantry and your Hellbrutes. And that's if your Hellbrutes have plague weapons. Hint, they don't built in. You can get them plague weapons, but it requires the uses of stratagems and abilities. So it's not, I don't think it's going to be as important unless you're going for like melee build, in which case it applies in melee all the time.
Yeah. I think the reason why this stings for me a little bit is that I have, every army I've ever had, I've created a Warlord. I've given them a name and they've become this epic thing. But when they're represented in the game, I just don't have the things I really want to give them.
Sure.
But it's more of a personal preference thing.
Yeah, and that's where you can, you know, sort of start, you know, that's where you can do them in like Crusade and like really beef them up.
Oh, well, Crusade did. Another fantastic effort with Crusade Games Workshop. Well done. Yeah, it's so good.
Every book that's been released, apart from weirdly, Death Watch and Space Wolves, have what I've been calling mini games.
Yeah.
So it's like, your Necrons, you get the names. Every game you win, you get a name to add to your sort of your dynasty, your leaders, like epithets, epitaphs. I can't remember what way around it is. I'm sure one of you will correct me. And every 5, you gain like a rule because but the point is you must.
Yeah.
You can't choose to have a name. You must because you're a Necron Overlord. That's what you're going to do. And in here, you get to build your own disease. It's so cool. Like I know we're supposed to be talking about bad.
What a legacy!
But it's you know, it's things like that. That's where you can have that sort of you know, that fluffy aspect and really make those really, really badass characters in like Crusade and stuff. I think in terms of the overall Warlord trait, I do kind of get what you mean. That there's a couple that you just look at and you go, that's really good. That's so much better. Yeah. There's a few that will see use. The beauty of it is, you have the ability to take up to 3 Warlord traits in a 2,000 point game now by going, I'm going to spend some CP on my other characters. So you can take another Warlord trait without feeling like you're handicapping yourself, which is really good.
Yeah. And what is quite nice is that I am sort of really trying to pick stuff out that's bad. So it's not that bad. It's just one of the things that I didn't like very much.
Now, one thing that I will say that I think is a bad, and this is actually going to... It's a combination of it's bad because it kind of is forcing people to... It's forcing armies into a particular build. And secondly, it's bad because it's actually just really confusingly written. So they have a rule, it is a detachment rule called Lords of the Death Guard. This is very similar to your captain rule from Space Marines, which is basically you're limited to the characters that you can have. And Lords of the Death Guard is you can have 1 Lords of the Death Guard model in each detachment in a Death Guard, in your army, right? In addition, you can have 1 Demon Prince per detachment in your army. The problem is Demon Princes have both keywords. So if you run a Demon Prince, you cannot take a Chaos Lord, you cannot take a Chaos Lord in Terminator army, you cannot take Typhus, you cannot take a Lord of Contagion, you cannot take a Lord of Virulence. This means if you're running a battalion, you must take a Sorcerer. What if you don't want to run Sorcerers? What if you do not like the idea of taking psychic powers? What if you don't want, it doesn't fit your army theme? Or what if you're thinking that actually the sorcerers are you're not a fan, you don't think the psychic powers, I mean, the psychic powers are good. Like, this is the thing, it's kind of, this is a very sort of, nitpicky thing, because it's kind of like, if you're not running the Plague Marine sorcerers, you are kind of missing out on a good chunk of rules, because they are good. Their powers are good. But what if you don't want to, is the point? Or what if you wanted to take just another melee beat stick? You've now got to take another detachment. So it's just kind of a bit...
It's strangely restrictive in a book that has become much less restrictive. Yeah,
it's really odd, especially when you combine it with the Fetid Virion rule, which is all of those elite characters that you have, so your Surgeon, your Tallyman, your Noxious Blightbringer, all those guys, they're 3 for 1.
Yeah.
You can have 3 of those in one elite slot. But if you want to run more than one Chaos Lord, which and again, from a fluff perspective, I completely get it. The whole point is they're super jealous, and they're tyrants, and they lead their own war bands. But because you don't have a lieutenant style character, or like you don't have an exalted champion in there. So like, if that is a rule that comes about in Chaos Space Marines when that book comes out in 2027,
I look forward to it.
Yeah. Exalted champions are probably not going to affect that. So you've got your lieutenant equivalent, but you don't in here. So you could argue that your sorcerers are, but again, it just feels a bit weird, especially the fact that Demon Princes have both keywords. If they didn't have the Lord of the Death Guard keyword, you could go, cool, I have a Demon Prince and a Chaos Lord. Fine. It just feels unnecessarily curtailing. But again, it's so nitpicky that it's kind of almost not worth... I mean, it is worth mentioning, because I think it's just something that may get updated, and it will probably adjust how you build your armies, because you're going to have sorcerers, but you're probably going to want them anyway, so it's not the end of the world.
Yep.
There is, however, one factor that I think is an ugly... I mean, that's kind of it for bad. Like, as an overall for the army rules, that's it for bad. I think there is one factor that is definitely an ugly, and that is disgustingly resilient.
Oh, it's a big change.
It's a big old change. Now, it's not one that people aren't aware of. You guys have seen it all in Warhammer Community. It reduces all damage by 1. To a minimum of 1. You no longer have 5-up shrugs everywhere. There are ways to get shrugs. Basically, everyone's going to be buying a Plague Surgeon for that 6-up shrug in a bubble. It gives you core and characters as well, I believe. It might give you characters.
Let me consult the tome.
The Tome of Knowledge. You've got people asking, oh, but how is it going to affect Poxwalkers? Poxwalkers, they don't have it, but they do have a built-in 6-up shrug. That's it. That's their rule. It's called Unending Horde. So you still have access to shrugs in some capacity.
Infantry models within 3...
So it works like it's an apothecary.
Yeah.
So they don't.
Oh no, sorry. If you run Astartes infantry within 3 on a 6. Yeah.
So on a 6 they'll shrug. So sure, it's only a 6. Sure, it's only a 3. But now is where, and this is where why discussing resilient is an ugly for me, is you've got to account for the fact that there's a lot of damage 2 weapons out there at the moment. Lots of people are building for damage 2 because Marines, or damage 3 because Eradicators or things like that, or Custodes or vehicles or whatnot. Your Terminators are still going to be trucking after that. Sure, your Plague Marine is not going to survive being hit by a damage 3 shot. That's fine. But if they're shooting damage 3 weapons at Plague Marines... fine. It means your tanks and your Blight Lords and your Death Shroud and Mortarion, we'll get to him, are walking around unscathed.
Yes.
I understand why people don't like the change. And this is the thing. This is going to be very, very similar to the reanimation protocols with Necrons. People don't like it because it's a change. And I get it, because 1, rolling dice is fun.
Yes.
Secondly, and this is something that I did bring up in playtesting, it feels really weird that a Plague Marine feels less survivable against like lasguns and bolt guns than an Iron Hands Intercessor.
Yeah.
It's really odd. However, that is offset by the fact that Iron Hand Intercessors aren't toughness 5, for a start. Secondly, you can still get that 6-up shrug if you want it. So you still have access to shrugs. Where I think it is going to hurt a bit more is on the tanks.
Yep.
Because on your Demon Engines, Now, reducing damage by 1 is really nice. Like on Dreadnoughts, people are already kind of realizing, oh, okay, maybe I don't like these 6 damage weapons, but I feel like I've got to bring them now, or at least reliable anti-tank to punch through the reducing damage by 1. You've got that on all your demon engines. Here's where it's another ugly. You don't have that on your other tanks, and there is no way to give it to them. So contaminated monstrosity is no longer a stratagem. You cannot have 5-up shrug or, in this case, -1 damage rhinos. Soz. But I think it's still a really good rule, but it's gonna take some time to get used to.
Yes.
I think what people were expecting was 2 Wound Marines with a 5-up shrug, and they've not got it, and you're disappointed. And I get it. But also, you'd have to acknowledge the fact that your Plague Marines would need to be like 28 points at that stage. Whereas the -1 damage it's consistent. You know what you're going to get as well, and there is something to be said for consistency. I really like the change, but it's an ugly because it's going to cause a big change to how people need to build their armies and also look at how they're going to play their armies as well. They can't rely on, oh, I got that cheeky 5-up shrug, on a damage 4 las cannon shot. Oh, I got 5 5s. Haha. It's like, no, like they should die if they get hit by a las cannon, but absorbing a heavy bolter hit, that's cheeky.
It's very Death Guardy.
Yeah, I like the change, but I put it in ugly because it is a very contentious issue, I think.
I struggled to find a ugly in this book, but one thing it did highlight for me is the potential of Chaos Space Marines in general and all the other factions. This book gives us all the things that we want, but we can't have them, and it's very, very frustrating. When you look at Plague Marines with 2 wounds, it makes me sad. When you look at Hell Brutes that have the -1 to their damage, it makes me really sad. And there's so much cool stuff in this book which I cannot have because I don't play Death Guard, and it just really highlights for me, why wasn't Chaos Space Marines done before this? Because this goes with 1 army, and Chaos Space Marines covers a lot of different factions.
It does feel a little bit backwards.
It's very frustrating.
And I feel, I think that Chaos Space Marines first would have been better because 1, it would have set the stage for the others. Secondly, I kind of get it because it's a bigger book. Like there's a lot more going on, plus all of your sub legions and stuff. But at the same time, this does give a really nice little taste of what's coming. Like the Hellbrutes, for example, their Fire Frenzy rule has changed completely. Like, so before it was, oh, you took a wound on a 6, you get to fire or fight. Fine. It was hilarious when it happened, but it didn't happen often. What does it do now, Beard?
Each time a model makes an attack, if it has 7 or fewer wounds remaining, re-roll a wound roll of 1.
Great. It's nice and simple. It's a constant benefit if you leave a Hellbrute alive, which again, with your built-in -1. Now, they don't have like a Duty Eternal and Disgustingly Resilient guys. They're not reducing damage by 2, but they do have Contagions, which is cool. So I think everything has Contagions in there, barring cultists, but we'll get to them.
Stupid cultists.
I get what you're saying, and it's such a pity because there's things in there like Possessed.
It's so much better than my Possessed.
Like
so much better.
Like it creates this weird dichotomy where you've got 1 army that is obviously going to be like this.
Yes.
It's obvious, like you're obviously going to have 2 Wound Marines. You're obviously going to be getting like new army rules, or like if your entire army is Legionnaires Astartes, or heretic Legionnaires, or whatever they're going to call them, because they've given them like bubonic Astartes keyword. They still have heretic Astartes, but the bubonic Astartes is kind of like their bespoke keyword. I imagine they'll do the same for Chaos Marines, basically to stop weird interactions of, oh, here's Abaddon and he gives all Heretic Astartes reroll 1s, and it affects it'll affect your Death Guard, but then he'll have like 1 specially for the normal legions. I don't know, but it's just it's frustrating. I get it, because you are seeing a little glimpse of the future, but the future is so far away.
It's so beautiful. That's fine. It's something to look forward to, I guess. That can be the positive spin. Well, that's good and bad lucky for the book. Should we go through some data sheets?
We'll pick out a couple of data sheets each and then give a final verdict.
And we now come to the data sheets. the meat and disgusting potatoes
Rotten,
of the book.
moldy,
Lots of changes.
Yes, lots of changes.
Positive changes.
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So yeah, so general caveat, like I said earlier, we know discussing resilience change. You know that your hateful assault is now like a permanent thing. Your remorseless rule is basically the same as they show no fear, so you ignore all modifiers to combat attrition, which is cool. Malicious volleys is still the same. Your data sheets they just feel a little bit tighter, a little bit better.
Much tighter.
For me, two of the big winners are the Terminators. Your Blight Lords and your Death Shrouds. Now, your Death Shrouds are quite expensive. Your Blight Lords are quite expensive. However, your toughness 5, you have 3 wounds, you reduce all damage by 1, and you keep your 4-up invulnerable save. Oof.
Delicious.
They're
Delicious.
so tough
Yep.
to shift. Now, they're not the Blight Lords are not the most offensive. They've lost their bonus AP on 6s to wound. How often did that come up? Yeah. But I mean, here's the thing: when you've got your contagion, if you've got like your bubotic axes, you're wounding Marines on 2s at -2, rerolling 1s because they're plague weapons. Sure, they're only damage 1, and your combi bolters are combi bolters. They're not like plague bolters or anything like that. But they're still really good.
Yep. Chop, chop.
You know, you whack a couple of flails in there. Flails don't stack anymore. Oh, that's one thing we didn't mention. Death to the False Emperor. Bye-bye.
See ya.
It's gone.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it's gone. Now, that is a big change.
Yep.
I would say that's a good change.
I think so,
because, so yeah, we're slightly backtracking here. We honestly forgot to mention that. I think it's a good change. One, because it was very... Obviously, it was matchup dependent.
Yes.
And then there'd be some matches where you have an army rule that does nothing, which is just lame. Also, you trade it basically for contagions. It's a good trade.
Better.
It's a really good trade.
Yeah.
The Terminators are super tough, really choppy. Good, like they're a really good mainstay unit. I think Death Shroud, they're priced quite high, but man, they are scary.
Yeah. They play like the models look.
Yeah.
Like they're terrifying.
Beastly, yeah. Now their bodyguard rule has changed. They no longer get like the Eyes of Mortarion rule, which allows them to get an extra attack if they're within range of a non-Mortarion character. But I think they've got like 4 attacks base.
Yes, they do.
Plus they can cleave for 8 attacks.
Yes, they can.
So, yeah. Or you do your big Psy for it's like -1 to hit, but it's damage 2 -3.
Yeah.
They're
Strength
scary
7.
boys. And being bodyguards now, they're following the new bodyguard rules that you would have seen in your Space Marines and Necron book, which is a infantry character just can't be shot. If there's a single Death Shroud next to them, can't shoot them.
Yeah.
He just goes, "No, master. Stand in the way."
Get behind me.
So they're like both of those units. I think are really, really strong.
Yeah. Were the so going back to the Blight Lords, were the flails 2 hits instead of 1 previously, or was that
flails were
replaced?
D3?
Yeah.
And they used to be. I think it was +2 strength, -2, and damage 2.
Yeah.
But damage would spill over. Damage doesn't spill over anymore.
No, but you're getting 6 attacks on your basic Terminators with the flails.
You're getting your flat 2 attacks now.
Yeah.
I think they've lost a point of strength, but again, you've effectively gained an extra 2 strength. I'm not sure how the maths works. You've effectively gained extra strength because of contagion. It simplifies the speed of it because you don't have to roll and then you go, oh, I got 2 6s there, so roll another 2d3 against because I happen to be playing Imperium. Oh, but there's a -1 to hit, so I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's much neater, it's much easier. Also, I think they're cheaper. So it's kind of, it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
Both of those are a massive, massive good for me. They're a big winner. Without wanting to give too much away, in playtesting, I did write up a list with 30 Blight Lords because I didn't need anything else.
Disgusting.
Like, I don't care if I'm like, I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
They were super solid. I do not see them being anything less than super solid now.
Yeah.
Just it's the 4-up invuln on a toughness 5 platform and the reduced damage by 1. It's crazy. Woo! And that's where you can give them the 6-up shrug.
It's delicious.
You have your surgeon behind them fixing them,
Yeah.
and he can heal them anyway.
Fix them up real nice.
Yeah. So they're a winner for me.
Yeah. You know what else is a winner?
Who?
Death Guard Demon Prince.
Okay.
I like it.
You like it, do you?
Yes. Now, there's other ones I had picked, but this one's interesting for me because this hopefully is a glimpse again into the future. I'm being quite selfish with this. But looking at, right, so if you're running a Demon Prince at the moment, you will always take the Malefic Talons, always, because it's just the best way of running them. However, again, another great thing this book does is give you other options for your data sheets. So with the different weapon profiles now, you can really mess up high toughness units with a Demon Prince. You're not always going to take the Malefic Talons. If you go for the Demonic Axe, for instance, you're strength 9. Strength 9. It's very cool. So I think Demon Princes have always been really tempting to take because they are so cool. And everyone likes Demon Princes because they should be amazing. Whereas I feel like at the moment, Demon Princes are in a bit of a funny spot. They're okay, they're good, they're kind of expensive, but you'll probably use something else instead. But you can have Demon Princes to fill specific roles now. So if you are lacking in your anti-armor, for instance, and you just want to throw a Demon Prince up and probably kill some stuff, you've got the option to with some of the war gear options now.
Yeah, I think the Demonic Axe no longer reduces, there's no longer a -1 to hit on it. It's still flat 3 damage. I would argue that the sword is better for Nurgle Demon Princes, and the reason being is because of Contagion.
Yep.
So your sword will give you +1 strength, so your strength 8, your -3, your flat 3 damage, and then you got your Talon on top. Now, you don't have Hateful Assault, but you got 5 attack space because it's baked in now. So now you've got 5 attacks, weapon skill 2. Sure, you're not re-rolling anymore. This is another thing about what, this is just general new codex stuff, guys. You're going to have to get used to not rolling what you were doing for 2 years. But when your Plague Sword is wounding anything that is toughness 5 and below on 2s because of your Contagion, and wounding pretty much every tank in the game on 3s, even Knights, at -3 and damage 3, great. And the thing is, the sword is more expensive than the Talon now. Shall I tell you why?
Please.
Talon's worse. Talon's -1 now. And you get 1 attack per Talon, not 3 attacks for 2. So actually, there's less incentive to take Talons.
Yeah.
The Talon is kind of back to what it used to be, which is a sidearm, or side claw.
Yeah.
The sword or the axe are going to be... I think the sword is going to be a go-to with the Demon Prince. Yeah. The Demon Prince is still really good. Again, he doesn't have the clutch moments where you roll 4 5-up shrugs. But also, if you pick your targets right, you're not going to be in a position where that needs to happen because you just go, I failed 1 save against your Mastercrafted Power Sword, I'll take 1 damage.
Yep.
It's, I get it. I think they're still a solid unit. And I think they're a little bit cheaper now.
A little bit.
A little bit cheaper. Not a huge amount. We're not talking like they're suddenly 130 points, but I think they're, 175 with wings?
Let's double check.
180 something with wings.
Demon Prince of Death Guard, 140 points, and the wings are +35.
It's a bit cheaper. Yeah. It's a bit cheaper. Are they cheap enough? I don't know. But they're still really good. They're still psychers and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I get it. However, I will one-up you and just say Mortarion.
Oh, he's a bad man. Oh, yes.
Oh, he's a bad man.
Yes.
Okay, so I won't go too much into Mortarion because people have seen, everyone's seen the stat line for him. Everyone knows that Disgustingly Resilience is for him. You can still whack on Miasma of Pestilence on him for a -1 to hit, I believe, from the Psychic Power, so double check that. Now, Blades of Putrefaction is no longer a thing. Fine. However, with some of the selections of the contagions that he has, he can do mortal wounds if he wants, or he can be a really good buffing unit. There's a fantastic contagion from one of the sub-factions, one of the play companies. I can't remember which one it is, but you basically go, cool, are you in contagion range? And he's always round 4, remember? Are you in contagion range? Great, you don't get cover.
You said Miasma of Pestilence?
Yes.
Yeah, a friendly Death Guard unit.
So you can still give him -1, which is nice. He still has the Heretic Astartes keyword, so you could ally in a Sorcerer to cast Warp Time on him, but then you're giving up the Contagion. I don't think that's worth it.
Not worth it.
Not when he's Toughness 8, and also not when he keeps the 5-up shrug. Remember, he has 4 warlord traits, one of which is a contagion that you can pick freely.
4 warlord traits.
One of them is revoltingly resilience. No, it does not give you -1 damage anymore. It gives you a 5-up shrug. So Mortarion is toughness 8 with 18 wounds, a 4-up invuln, a 5-up shrug, and he reduces damage by 1. Sure, he can be shot at, but you don't care. His other ones are Arch Contaminated. Now, that doesn't affect him, but it makes him a good buffer for the second wave when they reach there. And then my favourite is Living Plague. Living Plague. It is only a 3-inch range, but any enemy units within 3 inches cannot benefit from any friendly aura abilities. Chapter Master, no! Lieutenant Rerolls, get out of here!
It's amazing.
It's so, like, he's expensive. He's nearly 25% of your army, but he takes so much to bring down.
Yeah.
I think he's a super solid choice.
He's pointed correctly.
I think he's pointed about right, given that you can shoot him from anywhere on the board as long as you can see him, and he's a big boy.
Yeah.
But again, it's that fact of if you've built your army like with him in there, you're going to build other stuff in there to absorb firepower or go give your opponent a really difficult choice. I think he's a super solid choice all round. It's kind of why I'm a bit off of the Demon Princes, because I just look at it and I go, yeah, I mean, okay, sure, he's nearly, 2.5 times more expensive, but also he does the work, like, and he will absorb so much shooting and so much melee. Like your opponent has to he almost operates like a Necron Warrior squad, like a 20-man Necron Warrior squad. You almost have to over-invest in resources to deal with him.
100%.
He will absorb way more than his points cost.
Yeah.
Way more. Unless you get incredibly unlucky and okay, a unit of 6 Eradicators will one-shot him. Actually, I don't think they do.
Probably not.
I don't think they do. Even if you said you had all of the rerolls, I'm just going to try and do some really, really quick maths in here. Someone can do the maths quicker in the field. But I think on average, you'll actually get around about 10 hits on him. You'll get 4 wounds on him unless you're Salamander, 5 wounds on him unless you're Salamanders. He'll save 2 of them. Let's assume that you're in 12-inch range, in which case next turn you're dead. Let's be fair, you're dead. And then at that point, so you do d6 plus 1 damage at that stage. The average will be 7 plus it. You'll do 9 damage. He'll shrug 3 of them. You've done 6 wounds.
Yeah.
That's really quick maths and it's probably well off. But now you need 18 Eradicators to kill him in a single turn of combat.
Yeah.
Turn of shooting. At which point, okay, fine. At that point, you've taken 18 Eradicators. You have other problems that you need to deal with. But I think he's a great pick. I'm done gushing over Mortar.
He's wonderful. Well, the last one for me are Possessed. So this is a bit of a curveball one, not something necessarily expecting, but the data sheet has changed to the point where they are very exciting, actually, in my opinion. The way that they're pointed, I feel like they are a really interesting take for any Death Guard player. So in terms of having a really efficient combat unit, you can't take 15 anymore, goes down to 10. But instead of having the weird D3 attacks with their writhing tentacles, now it's just a flat 4 attacks, which is really nice per Possessed. They're also plague weapons as well, so you've got the rerolls for your wounds. And they are toughness 5.
And they're toughness 5.
Which is very nice. No increase in wounds. There's still 2 wounds like there were before, but I feel like they're actually a really solid choice. Now, you can't put them in a Rhino, which is a bit of a bummer, and it does specify you can't take Possessed in a Rhino, but I feel like it's one of those units which could quite easily be ignored because of things like Mortarion. So if you're running a bunch of Possessed and you've got Mortarion, you may well find your Possessed can get far enough across the board that you're going to get a relatively early charge off, and they can do the business in combat.
Yeah. You have less overall attacks because like you would previously they were 2 attacks base with Hateful Assault, right? And then they were D3 attacks. Oh no, they were D3 plus Hateful Assault, weren't they?
So you get
now you're always on 4 attacks. So actually you're
kind of maxing what you had before.
What you always had.
Yeah.
The toughness 5 is fantastic.
Yeah.
They've got the disgustingly resilient, so you've got to shoot them with either a lot of damage 1 weapons or a lot of damage 3 weapons.
Yeah.
But you've got your 5-up invuln, you've got your 7-inch move, you play weapons. For 3 points more than a Plague Marine, you are giving up objective secured and a bolt gun.
Yep.
It's a real tough decision. I think the thing is, a unit of 10 is 240 points.
Yeah.
That's a big threat. I don't care if they're not in a transport, because you just go, yeah, cool, advance. Turn 2, I'm going to charge you.
If you compare it to normal Space Marines and think about a way that you can max out the attacks, you have to take a Master of Possession. You have to get a power off to be able to get the 4 attacks. That's the difference. You don't have to take Master of Possession and you just get it every time. So I think comparatively to what they are currently in Chaos Space Marines, they're a brilliant unit.
Yeah,
good.
I think they're super, super good.
Yeah.
There are, however, some bads.
Some,
not
a lot.
Like, I mean, we said earlier, there's not a huge amount. I think one of the standouts for me is the Blightbringer. He just doesn't bring much anymore.
Hilariously.
Yeah, I know,
his
right?
name.
He gives you +1 to your movement and advance. So basically you get +1 to your movement is what that boils down to for core and weirdly Virion characters, not other characters. So you can't give that to Mortarion or a Demon Prince or your Lords of Contagion or anything like that. Fine. He does like a 6-inch aura of -1 to casting to enemy psychers and a 6-inch aura of -1 to, I think, leadership and combat attrition. Like, he's cute and he's only 60 points, but I've got the other variants are so much better. Like, you've got the Surgeon, you've got the Tallyman. He just gives you a flat +1 to hit now. Shooting as well.
He wants to get those numbers up.
Core only.
No more rookie numbers.
No, he wants to
Pump those numbers up.
I won't do that because it will hurt the mic. But yeah, so he's amazing. The guy with the rack, the guy with all the grenades and stuff.
Noxious. No, hang on.
The guy with all the grenades, like you pick a friendly unit in your command phase, and he basically
the Bioglus Putrefier.
That one. He's the one that gives you Blaze of Putrefaction now, so it's unmodified 6s to wound with a plague weapon in melee. You do that on a unit possessed or something like that, right? That was really scary. So units like that are really ramping up your offensive capability for about the same points. I can't see a place for the Blightbringer. I mean, +1 movement's nice, and he's only 60 points. But it's just, I've got better choices, is the problem, I think, for me.
My one is Cultists.
You hate Cultists.
I hate Cultists. So lame. They got a points reduction, and they're still bad.
Yeah.
They're now 5 points a model.
Yeah.
But
the Chaos Space Marine ones, I think, are 6 points. These ones are 5 points. They don't have Contagions. They don't have OBSEC.
Why are they?
A Poxwalker is 5 points.
I don't get it. They've chosen not to put some things in this book, but they've kept Cultists.
I get it because you have, you know, there's models for them, but there are also push fit models from the Dark Vengeance box set that haven't been updated. It would just be better if they got rid of Cultists completely.
Yeah.
And they go, here you go, here's Zangor for Thousand Suns, here's Poxwalkers for your Death Guard. That's literally what we're talking about. You know, we've seen that they're introducing Slangor in Age of Sigmar, so maybe one day when there's an Emperor's Children and a World Eaters type codex, I just want Demonkin back, man.
Yeah, Demonkin
was great. You know, you can do that sort of stuff, but just generic cultists, it's like, if you want that,
no one wants that.
Forge World, just make Renegades work. Don't make them legends like they currently are.
Let's move on.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about that.
The other thing as well, and this is important actually for Poxwalkers, you do have to have a Bubonic Astartes infantry for each Poxwalker and Cultist in your army.
Yeah.
So you cannot spam Poxwalkers in your troops anymore.
Yeah.
So you do basically need to go right, and that can be like Terminators. It doesn't have to be Plague Marines, but it does mean that if you want to fill out your battalion with 3 units of Poxwalkers, you have to have 3 units of Terminators in your elites.
Yeah.
So you've got to tweak your army thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you've got a Poxwalker at 5 points and a Cultist at 5 points, I know which one I'm going to take, right? And I think another all-star from, and this is just off the back of the Poxwalker. I don't think Poxwalkers are bad by any means, but a unit that is currently very good that I no longer think is good, or was good, are the Blight Haulers.
A bit of a fall from grace.
I think, and this could be controversial, because they may yet surprise me, I think they're way too expensive. They're not nearly as survivable anymore. I don't believe they give the light cover bonus anymore.
I'll check. Oh, gone too far.
Oh no.
Oh no, come on now. Play by Scrawler. Nope.
Yeah. So they're -1 to hit in combat. fine. Your ballistic skill, sure. I mean, demon engines as a whole have gotten a nice boost.
Yeah.
You know, the weapon skill free, ballistic skill free.
But it's PS3.
This is where the changes to disgustingly resilience, I think, really impacts the army. Hence why I sort of put it as an ugly. It is a good change, but when there are going to be times where you go, I made 2 5-ups, and now it's going to be a case of I failed a save. I take 2 damage, or I take 1. Oh, you take 1 damage. Yeah. That's the thing. But it's gonna feel worse, and I think it's exemplified on those guys specifically because they don't provide any buffs to the army anymore. They don't get any rerolls from the army anymore. Inexorable Advance specifies that it's Bubonic Astartes that get the keyword, and none of the demon engines have Bubonic Astartes, so they do not get to shoot into combat without the penalty. So Inexorable Advance gives your vehicles the ability to ignore the -1 to hit for big guns never tire, which is really tasty.
Yeah.
But half your vehicles don't get it.
Yep.
And the 5-up pin button is nice. I just think they're too expensive. I think they're too expensive for what they do. I don't think you're going to see very many of them.
No.
Especially when you look in the heavy support section, you go, oh, I could take a Myphotic Blight Hauler at 140 points, or I could take a Defiler for 160. And Defilers are real good now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one that I don't think are great from the older units or the units that you already had.
Yeah. Another unit that is too expensive because it should be free is the new building for the Death Guard, which has a funny name, a Miasmic Malignifier. Now, on paper, there are some cool things that this does. My issue with it, and my issue with buildings in general, is that they cost points. I know they need to cost something, but 75 points invested into this, for me, it's not worth it at all. There's just so many other ways you could invest 75 points without putting it into a building. Now, the main issue with this, for me, is that it is a vehicle, as well as a building, and there's so much stuff that can deal with vehicles so easily, it's gonna be gone very, very fast. And on top of that, you don't get, it's not a demon engine building, although it is a vehicle, so you have no invulnerable save for it. So you throw in a few las cannons and it's gone. It's got 12 wounds with a 3-up save.
I think
it's toughness 8.
Yeah, it's toughness 8, but again, it's las cannons.
Yeah,
it's a shame because it does provide. I mean, it gives you light cover to your infantry within 6, and if they're already getting light cover, it counts as it gives them an additional +1. So you can have Terminators rocking around with like a -1 save, or like a 0-up save, which is hilarious. He always counts as being in turn 4. You can deploy them mid-board, so you can plonk them in the middle of the board and just go, come at these objectives, and you're already going to be at -1 to my shield. I think they have a place. The problem is they're targetable.
Yep.
And if you're paying points for it, it's a problem. Now, you compare it to Age of Sigmar, where, and I think this is the other thing as well, you've got these sorts of, terrain pieces, and they're usually quite expensive for their points, usually with a bunch of special rules, or a few guns, or a mix of both. And this is actually one of the better priced of these. Yeah. So like the Hammerfall bunker is 175 points. Boop. It's not even a bunker. If you could get inside it, it might make it interesting. The Star Steelies, the Convergence of Dominion from Necrons, they're 120 points. You get the 3 of them, but they give you command protocols, fine. At 75 points, I think it's actually pretty reasonable, but it's the sheer fact that it's, like you say, it's one model with no invuln, rather, 3-up save and 12 wounds, and it's going to die.
It's gone in a time.
If it didn't cost points, it would be broken, and you would need to give it like one special rule.
Yeah.
If it wasn't targetable, you'd need to increase the points.
Yep.
I don't know. I kind of get it. Like, I think it's got some potential and it's got some use, but it's not like when you look at the Feculent Gnarlmaw, which is an untargetable piece of battlefield debris. You pay points for it, but the fact is that's going to stick around. If that was 100 points, but it was battlefield debris, I think I'd be like, okay, you know what? There's an argument to take this in a lot of armies, if not every Death Guard army, which then comes all the way back around to being potentially an auto take, which I'm not a fan of. But that's kind of it for bads, really. I mean, you could really dive into it and go, oh, but this particular relic is bad, or this particular psychic power is bad, but that's not what we're doing here. This is the data sheets. And it's similar. It's a similar case with Ugly as well. I think we're almost a bit nitpicky here.
Oh, yeah,
with the ones that are in the Ugly section. For me, I would say that the bubonic tanks are an ugly. So like your Predators, your Land Raiders, your Rhinos. And I kind of touched upon this earlier, and that's, sure, you get the benefit of being able to shoot into combat with no -1 to hit, great, but you don't have disgustingly resilient, so you're actually pretty flimsy. You have contagions, so there is actually a really hilarious thing you can do with like Rhinos and just advance them up and go drive around giving off disease and making people -1 toughness, which is hilarious. But they're not, and it's not as bad anymore because of the changes to the GT mission pack, and Bring It Down isn't as punishing anymore if you're running tanks. So they have a place, but they're just in a weird spot. I think all the vehicles are. The Demon Engines have gotten better, but they don't get any benefit from the sort of the army rules. You know, I mean, sure, Contagion. I don't think Defilers have Disgustingly Resilient, which is actually a big deal for Defilers. But also they're quite cheap for what they do.
Nope.
But ballistic skill free, flat free damage on their battle cannon.
Woo!
That's nice.
Yep.
You know, so, but it's still that thing of they don't get the benefit of shooting into combat with no penalty. They don't get the inexorable advance benefit of ignoring the penalty to movement. You know, your Hellbrutes should be able to ignore a barricade. Let's be fair.
Should.
A Defiler should not care about a barricade. And you don't get that. And it just feels like, and it's weird because if you go back to like 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, Death Guard were a foot-slogging army, and vehicles were not rare, but they were more limited for Death Guard, and it feels like they've kind of not forced you back into that, but it feels like you kind of have to do that if you want to get the benefit of your army rules. They have a place, but I think there's more interesting things than just taking a Death Guard Predator, for example. Yeah. That's an ugly for me.
Yeah. I think for me, ugly-wise, again, it's a little bit nitpicky, but every Death Guard player out there at the moment will have to fundamentally change the way they use their army. There aren't really any similarities. Well, there are similarities, but pretty much every rule has changed to the point where you're going to have to rethink how you play your game with your army. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, it's just a thing that we need to consider.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ben is still running around outside because he's so excited about everything and he couldn't bring himself to be in this video. But for him, he's going to have to completely rethink how he plays Death Guard now.
A lot of, I mean, this is just a general thing, like a lot of units have changed, like war gear have changed, you know, Plague Knives are now -1.
Yeah.
Great, that's awesome, but you've got to remember that.
Yeah.
And most of the time, and let's be fair, you'll remember giving yourself the extra AP. You're damn right.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's things like the flails not overspilling, and it's not doing the D3 attacks, and not having Death to the False Emperor, but also the fact that you've got an extra wound, and also that you don't get the it's more like Necrons from 8th to 9th than Marines from 8th to 9th, in that this is not, here's the book, and it's basically what you know and love, with a few little tweaks and changes and a few new units. This is, here's your book, get rid of that, this is your new one.
Yeah.
It's a complete, not a complete overhaul, because there is a lot of fundamentally similar things, but you are going to have to read into it and go, right, okay, you know, you can't do the mean thing of lobbing 10 mortal wound grenades at 12 inches anymore. It's not a thing anymore. Neither of those stratagems exist in the way that they used to. There are still some semblance of things like that, but you've got so many new tools and toys that actually the old way of playing it, you're kind of probably going to look back on and go, wow, that was the only way that I really could do this well.
Yeah, I think definitely this, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad that the rules have changed. They've just changed to the point where you're going to have to completely rethink how you play Death Guard. I actually think that it's a good thing that we're doing this, because you just have so many options of how to run your army now. You can be combat, you can be psychic, you can run Mortari in every single game, and people will be like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, you go, yeah, he's a bad man.
Yeah, it's just different. We fear change as human beings, and there is a lot of change here. Yeah. But although you are going to have to rethink it and probably keep your head in your book for your first few games, it's just going to be very different. Yeah. But probably it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to feel more rewarding. But as I say, it's sort of back to the point about this kind of being a bit of an ugly in regards to the data sheets as a whole. It kind of fits in with what we've mentioned earlier with sort of, you know, like the demon engines and stuff. You know, there's going to be a lot of people going, my army doesn't work anymore. My army was 60 Poxwalkers and nothing but demon engines. And now those demon engines are more expensive, not as efficient, and you've got to have Plague Marines now, or Terminators. So your army is going to change drastically. And that is, it sucks. It sucks, but I think it is for, it's overall good for the health and the longevity of the book, because there's so many more interesting things. And it feels more rewarding.
Yeah.
From what we've sort of done and looked at and play testing and that, it feels more rewarding to play with them, because they aren't just a generic, oh, well, this strategy didn't work, or I didn't have the CP to do it, or this thing that I planned on failed, and it kind of, oh, well, that's it. You know, game over. It doesn't feel like that anymore, because you've got that resilience to fall back on, where you can kind of be like, yeah, I can carry on, and you can still build some real nasty lists. They just may not be, they may not resemble ones that you are used to.
Yeah.
Overall, however, I think the book is a great book. That's a good stamp from me.
Yes, 100%.
I think if you're a Death Guard player, you're going to be very happy with the changes once you've gotten used to them. Yeah. Again, like, speaking from experience, like, now, neither of us are really like proper Death Guard players, but we've played them enough, play tested them, I've used them previously, I've played against them a lot. For me, it's going to be very similar to, from my experience coming like with the Necron changes. At first glance, my army's ruined. My army's totally different. It's not the same anymore. I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get 2 Wound Marines with toughness 5 and 5 up shrug, and also like 22 points or whatever you were expecting them to be. It is good. It's that transitionary period, but I think the overall, what's in the book, when you sort of really dig into it and you find some of those nuances and the combos and the abilities, and you sort of look at stuff and you go, wow, that's so much better. Yep. It's all gonna come out on top, and I think they're going to be a very strong book. Now, you could argue they're going to be a very strong book, Chef, because they're one of the newest codexes. Sure, fine, but in the overall scope of 9th edition, I think they're definitely following that sort of Necron pattern of, this is such a revitalization of the book that's going to give you so much fun. Ask any Necron player how much fun they're having with the Necron book, and they will tell you they are having tons. And I honestly think it's going to be the same with Death Guard. Yeah,
it feels like every list that we've put together in the playtest, and everything that we thought about in terms of how to make Death Guard work, this book makes you feel like Death Guard should feel. Yeah. It really embodies the look and feel of the army, and it allows you to play that way as well. Yes, there is going to be a period of getting used to it, but I think what we've seen from Space Marines and Necrons, this book is built for 9th edition. Oh yeah. And we've said plenty times in the past, when Army X gets a codex, it will feel completely different. But this feels exactly how it should feel for 9th edition, and that is encouraging, looking to the future for other codecs that are due to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, the precedent has already been set. The precedent continues. There are, as we've discussed sort of at length already, there is a few things that are less than ideal. There's a few things that, in our personal opinions, are outright bad. When you get your grubby mitts on the codex, let us know what you think. Yeah. Let us know what you think based on what we've said. Let us know what you think based on your experience as a Death Guard player. Maybe there's something from the previews that we've not touched upon that you go, but actually, what about this? And we kind of go, okay, yeah, that's right. That's why we love the comments. Yeah, we want to have that discourse with you guys and you gals out there. And frankly, I mean, I would be, like I say, I know Bone is extremely happy with it. Again, at the start, he was a bit like, oh, disgustingly resilient is rubbish.
Yeah, but everyone said that.
Everyone said that.
You need to hold your thoughts until you read the whole book. It all makes sense when you get that in your hands.
Or, just run Mortarion. Yeah, just run Mortarion.
Yeah, leave everything else at home.
Yeah, run Mortarion. Hang on. Mortarion, 2 units of 10 Blight Lords, a unit of 8 Blight Lords, and then like a Chaos Lord or maybe like a Sorcerer. There you go.
Enjoy.
You don't need Obsec when everything is melting before you.
And we'll leave it at that. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this one. Like we said, like Chef just said, let us know what you think in the comments. Do wait until you have the book in your hand before you come to any conclusions with the Death Guard Codex, because there's a lot to take in. Let us know what you think. Give us a little like if you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time for some more fun times.
Oh, fun times. I like fun times.
Me too.
Marines on twos.